Hi, I'm Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni, and I'm here today with Seth Medina. He's an independent real estate investor, and he's working in advertising and moving into real estate. So, Seth, let's talk about what you're doing and how you've gotten here today. I understand when you first went to college, you decided to go into graphic arts, which makes sense that you'd then go into advertising. But when you finished school, what did you think you were going to do?
Well, it's funny, actually, before I went to go to get my graphic design degree, I went to school for business. And
Oh, okay.
for a semester before, I think at that age, it's tough to really know what you want to do in life.
Right.
And so I went for a semester. I thought, well, maybe this is not what I want to do. And then I decided to pursue graphic design because that was also an interest of mine.
Hmm.
And so that's what I ended up uh, studying. But yeah, and when I entered the world of graphic design, I really had no idea what I wanted to do when I came out of school. So I had
And
no
you got a
real.
master's? You got a master's in graphic
Oh
design? Oh, okay.
no,
Okay.
just in associates actually. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Good. So when you did graduate, what was your thought? What were you doing?
So when I graduated, it was a very interesting time in history where 9/11 just happened. So um, the economy was horrible. Jobs were hard to find. It was not a good time to graduate school. So
Right.
uh, I worked. I took a temporary job doing something that was kind of related, and I was using a computer and using scanning documents actually for law firms.
Oh,
Um,
that's my background. Did you
yeah,
know
yeah.
that?
Well, I remember you saying that a minute ago. So you're probably familiar with this, but
But I was in
at one
charge of
point,
all the scanning and imaging and all that kind of stuff. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so I took a job working temporarily. It was something for like 3 months, where it paid decent. It was something that I could rely on for 3 months. So
Right.
um, I took a job doing that, and the company that uh, you know, it was this huge litigation. So they needed like tons of people. They hired probably 20 people to help out
Right.
getting all these documents scanned. And so they liked me within a couple weeks, and they offered me a full-time job. And at that time, I was like, well, sure, I'll take it because it's tough right now. So I took that job, and I actually moved up into a leadership role with the company, and started doing a little traveling and things like that. But it wasn't it wasn't what I wanted to do. I mean, this was an industry was easily you could get sucked into it and never leave. I mean, there's a lot of people in that industry that they just jumped from each kind of document service or company, or actually start working for the law firms and things like
Right.
that. But that was never that was never anything that I wanted to do. This was something that I was just doing because I needed something.
Sure.
So
Oh, interesting. So you
yeah,
decided that wasn't for you and you got out early enough before they sucked you in because I know that they do.
yeah, yeah,
And then what did you do next? This is interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah. So I basically took a leap of faith. I just knew I couldn't do it anymore, and I just quit. I quit with nothing lined up. I didn't know what I
Uh-huh.
was going to do.
Uh-huh.
I was really, and I still am really into music. Music has been a huge part of my life. But there's a company that they did like CD manufacturing, and
Yeah.
so I thought, wow, how cool would that be to design CD covers for bands, or DVD covers or things of that nature, and it just so happened that they had an opening, and I started working for them. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
So
so
your graphic arts came into play.
right,
You were
and I was
designing.
I was still doing freelance work,
Hmm.
to still keep my skills sharp and things like that. But To actually now be in a job where I'm actually doing it for a living it was like, this is great,
Hmm.
um, so I worked there for probably about 5 years before
Any
I
big
figured,
covers that we've seen that you were working on?
uh, there's some bigger Colorado bands but I don't know that anyone would be familiar with them. But they were kind of like, I'd say they were like maybe some bigger bands in the '80s that were kind of making a comeback, and they still had somewhat of a name, but it was some of those kind of
Okay,
groups and bands. But yeah,
still
so it
fun.
was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but there was no future. Um,
right.
it was a small company. When I came in, that's where I left. There was no room to
Sure.
move anymore. So,
Okay.
I knew that wasn't going to be a forever job, and that I would have to, if I wanted to advance my career, I'd have to find something else, do something else.
And so what did you think that would be?
Well, now that I had a little experience under my belt, now I'm maybe 7 years out of school or something like that. There was a company that I'd been applying with. Well, I don't even want, it's an advertising agency I'd been applying with for ever since I graduated school.
Uh-huh.
And I finally got their attention, I think, now that I had some experience. And so I would pretty regularly, go onto their website and kind of see what jobs they had, apply for jobs. They had, they'd kind of keep your file, you know, on, on their database. So you
Yeah.
could just apply to things with, it wasn't too hard. So it wasn't anything that I really thought much of. I'd go on there and do it and didn't really expect anything of it. But then finally, I finally got a call, excuse me, and they were like, well, I think, you applied for these two jobs, but I don't think these ones are the right fit. But we have another job that wasn't listed on the site that we
Nice.
think that you'd be a good fit for. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's talk about it. So I knew if I could get in, because it was a big company, and I knew if I could get in, there would be room to grow in advance. So really, I didn't care what the job was.
Right.
And so I was like, well, if I can just work here, I can figure things out.
Uh-huh. So you took it, and what were you doing?
So I took it, and so essentially I was checking, like, when somebody builds a file, you have to ensure it's good to go to the printer.
Okay.
And so I was basically checking files to make sure they were print ready. It wasn't anything crazy, nothing like, I wasn't doing any design work or anything like that.
Sure.
But it was more of a QC type of job, and it was my foot in the door. So uh, I did that for a year, and they want you to stay in a position for a year before you apply for anything else. And so during that time, I was able to make some good relationships. One was with the design director for the company, and one of the designers had told me, "Hey, I'm moving to this other group, so there's going to be an opening. You should go talk to, you know."
Networking is good. Yeah.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And so when I heard about that, I was like, so I went and talked to the design director, and she's like, "How did you hear about that?" Like, because no one was supposed to be talking about it. And I was like, "Well, so and so told me that she was moving off and there was going to be an open position." She's like, "Okay, well, are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah." And so it was as easy as that.
Wow,
I didn't
nice.
have to interview. There was no like, it was like, okay, go talk to your boss and say that you're going to be moving to our group.
Very nice.
So
That's the way to get a job, right?
yeah, yeah. And
So far,
so,
it's been easy. Yeah.
yeah, so that was great. It was kind of proof of concept. I knew if I could get in, then I could figure some things out. And so once I did that, I took again, I started at the bottom. I was at a low level position. Um, so that was just a designer. I don't even, it might have even been called an associate designer or something like that. But
Hmm.
and I moved into a designer role, to a senior designer role, to a supervisor position, which I'm currently in now. So
Okay.
now I manage people and business and things like that. So
How do you like
it's
management?
I like it. I think that it's been something that it's kind of comes natural to me. Like I said, with the document scanning company, even I think they saw something kind of early on and promoted me pretty quickly. And I feel like even with before college and in high school, I was working as I would be an opener and closer for the
Oh, nice.
stores that I worked for. And so there's always been, I think, something there as far as some sort of leadership capabilities that people saw in me probably before I even saw them in myself.
Mhm.
But it's just been kind of a natural progression of me to move in that direction. And so
That's
I
wonderful.
like it. Yeah.
So I know you're still working in advertising at this job, and but you decided you needed a little bit more than this.
Well, again, like I'm at a point in my career, at least for this particular company, that there's not a whole lot more room to grow. I would essentially have to either take my boss's job or move into a whole nother department or something like that.
Okay.
And my boss is not going to leave anytime soon, and so and frankly, I don't think I'd really want that job anyways. So um, that's maybe it's a problem, and maybe it's there's a lot of people that are okay with what they do, and they don't want any more. They're content with
Right.
the job they have, and they don't ever strive to have any more. They're comfortable. Their bills are getting paid. Whatever it may be, the job is they they're they're fine with it. With me,
Okay.
it seems like I'm never really content with where I'm at, and I always want more. And and more, yes, like money is great, but it's more so of like me growing as a person and learning more. Like I'm always trying to become better or learn more or be more valuable or whatever that may be. But um, I'm always looking for the next step up. And I feel like if I'm going to make another step, um, yes, it could be with another agency, but uh, you know as I said offline, where it's just not my passion anymore.
Right.
And I think that's what really fueled me in the beginning, to make those advancements and whatnot. But I feel like where I'm at now, there's nothing fueling me to get to another position because there's nothing there. So
Sure.
um, so yeah, real estate, um, has been a kind of I mean it's been a passion, but I think that more so knowing when I first bought my first house and seeing the sweat put into it, and seeing what it was worth after that, and it was like, wow, that's really cool. And like and starting to understand like a little more of how real estate can work, and it's not so much of what a normal person would think is like this is their biggest purchase of their life, and they're buying this house, and
Right.
um and they're calling it an asset, and when it's really not. But like that's their understanding of things, where this is like the end all be all. This is our biggest purchase. It's this crazy life decision, and it is. I understand that. But like
Hmm.
once you get past that and you're looking at it more from an investment standpoint and the opportunities it can bring, that's where that's what really, once I started to understand that, that's what really sparked, some
Right.
fire. So yeah.
Yeah. And I've talked to a few people who have gone into real estate like this, and it sounds fascinating. So so you bought your house, and how did you learn about real estate investing after that? I mean, we all go and buy our first house, and you just kind of do it based on that's the house I want. But how do you know about how to do it for investment purposes?
Yeah, I think that was the key that I was missing. And my my ex-wife, she was an agent, and she was always about buying a house, and I was like, yeah, I'm on board. I totally agree with that. Now,
Mhm.
I always thought, like, okay, if we wanted to buy a second home, or uh, some sort of investment property, that we'd have to then save up all this money to go buy it. Um, and so she started working with some pretty, and I would say this was around the '07, '08 time, where things like everything crashed and there
Right.
were short sales and foreclosures left and right. And so she started working with these investors that were um, picking up all these properties and flipping all these properties. And she was on, both ends of buying and selling these homes for them.
Right.
And we got invited to their house for some summer party or something like that. And they lived in this amazing house in Cherry Creek, where you're
Oh,
probably
nice.
familiar with. Yeah. So
Yeah.
um, I was like, wow, like, and I'm saying, like, look at this, like, this is amazing. Um, but it was never something that she wanted to entertain, and so I didn't know. It's tough if your spouse isn't on board, and I always talk to people about this, that it's so important to have your spouse on board when you're doing this, because it's going to make things so much easier. And in
Sure.
fact, if they're on board, if you can actually team up, not that they're like saying, yeah, go ahead, you can do this, like, have fun, I support it, but really, like let's team up and like make this happen.
Right.
Like, it can be really powerful. But needless to say, we got divorced, and I lost the house, and we actually had a rental house, and I lost that as well. So I had to start over again, and I knew that real estate worked, but um, it was that, how are these guys able to purchase so many properties and flip all these properties? Like, they got to be rich, but how did they get the money to do that? How did they become rich, or how did they, how were they able to make this happen? And so um, along the way of me trying to figure out, for one, starting from nothing, like, how am I going to even purchase one house, or put, be able to fix a house up without any money? And so um, I I came across something called wholesaling, and wholesaling real estate. I was like, this can't be real. Like, this, like, how can you legally do this? And so
Yeah.
I literally spent 9 months after I found out about it, of
Mm-hmm.
really digging in, and I found a podcast, and I found some, decent YouTube information. Back then, it was really hard to find. Now it's everywhere, but
Right.
and we're not even talking that long ago. So it's like the content has multiplied greatly since then. So it's a lot easier to find information now. But then I found a podcast, and I literally started. Well, I listened to a couple episodes, and I literally went back to the beginning and started from the beginning and listened to every single episode. So I did this for like 9 months,
Uh,
and they talked a lot about reading books and getting in the right mindset,
and
and
let me
and
interrupt you for a minute. You did this while working a real job,
yes.
so you found time on your own to follow your passion.
Well, driving to work, driving home, uh, even at work. Like, normally I'd listen to music at work. I just
Yeah.
started listening to podcasts. Like,
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I just really immersed myself into it to really gain an understanding of it. And I believe that I had all the tools I needed after that 9 months of listening,
Hmm.
but I felt like I needed some sort of accountability. And so I went to my aunt, because I was broke. I had no money. Um, and I went to my aunt and said, hey, I want to pursue this, and I'm going to need to pay for the coaching. And then I need, about 6 months worth of marketing. And so I asked her for $10,000,
Hmm.
and she didn't, she didn't question it one bit. She said, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So she gave
We
me
all need ants like that right now.
it was amazing. So she gave me that 10,000. 5 of it went to a coach, 5 went to marketing. And you hear all these stories on the podcast, like these success stories, right? And I'm about 6 months in with like, I was like, man, did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? Because
Right.
I was not gaining any traction. Like it wasn't easy. Like it was work every single day, and it was hard. But about 6 months in, I finally got my first deal, and we talk again kind of about proof of concept. And so I was like, okay, this actually does work. You can do this. It's legal. Like,
Yeah.
even though you hear all the stories on the podcast, and it works for other people and other
Sure.
places. But I was able to prove that to myself. And so I was able to pay my aunt back, and I put all the money right back
Nice.
into the marketing. So so now I'm like, okay, this works. But I was like, man, I just sold this house, or not. So wholesaling, you're not selling any houses, you're selling a contract to somebody else. And so but anyways, I was like, okay, I just sold this contract to these flippers that are probably going to make a ridiculous amount of money on this. And I was like, how, because my whole idea was that I would wholesale a bunch of real estate to gain enough money to start buying them myself.
Uh-huh.
And, again, along the way, I continued my education, and I learned about private money. And I learned
Private
about,
investors. Yeah.
yeah,
Private investors.
private investors, that it wasn't hard money, because hard money is also a form of private money, but
Oh,
this
okay.
from like more of an individual willing to give you some money.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so I was like, okay, so I'm reading books, I'm figuring out how to do this. I'm learning how to flip houses by reading books. I mean, I had kind of done a flip before of a house that I was living in, but wasn't the same thing.
Uh-huh.
And so I felt like, okay, next house I find, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to figure out how to keep this house. And so I found a house a few months later after I had wholesaled that first house. And I was like, okay, how am I going to be able to do this? And so I called a hard money lender, and I was like, hey, I didn't know any better. Like, I don't know what their terms are, what their rates or anything like that. And I was like, okay, I have this great deal. I've never, had a hard money loan. I've kind of flipped a house, but it's like it was a live-in,
Yeah.
situation where it was done over several years, and all this. And the private lender was like, look, this is a great deal. If you think you can get this done, you have to have some skin in the game. I said, okay,
Mhm.
how much money do I need? And they're like, okay, well, we're gonna have uh, our guy come out there and take a look and estimate what he thinks it's going to take to renovate. And
Mhm.
then from there, we'll tell you how much money you need to come up with. And so I'm still friends with this guy today, actually, and his name is Al. He's awesome. And so Al goes to the property, looks at it. I kind of call him my advisor now, but um, he's like, okay, it's going to take, X amount to fix, and then you're going to need to bring X amount to the table, and you're going to have to, have this much ready to go. So he's like, you're going to need $60,000. And I was like, $60,000. Where am I going to find $60,000? I went back to my aunt again.
Uh-huh.
I said, look, I was able to make this one work. I got a bigger project now I want to take on. Would you be willing to give me $60,000? And she said, sure. Like, didn't even
Nice.
think about it. I said, great, I'll pay you interest on this. I should be done within, about 3 to 6 months. Are you okay with me paying you after I sell the house? She's like, yeah. So this what I thought I didn't think it was going to take me 6 months, but it almost took me that amount of time to get it fixed and listed and sold and all that kind of stuff. So that was a big learning curve too. But
Right.
got it done, paid her back, and now I had a good chunk of money of my own that I could start putting to use. So that was kind of the beginnings of things.
Oh, that's awesome. You make
Yeah.
it sound easy. I know it wasn't. So
Yeah, it was.
when you fixed it up, did you hire the contractors and things like that, or somebody else took over that part of it?
So it was a little bit of both. I did way more work than I ever should have, but so this is like the growing pains of learning how to do this and starting to do this, because you don't have those relationships with contractors, and
Right.
you know you don't necessarily know um, if it's a good deal or not, of what they're trying to charge you and things like that. So um, we I'm glad there's Facebook groups out there. I could put some feelers out for, hey, does anyone have a good HVAC person, or does anyone good at drywall, or I need some tile work done, or whatever it was. And I was able to piece it together. But I spent a lot of early mornings there before work, a lot of late nights there after work, and weekends, that I didn't have my kids, or days I didn't have my kids, that I would be there.
Yeah,
So it was grueling, but it's what needed to happen. So
that's great. So, if you had advice to give to somebody wanting to make this kind of a career change, what would you tell them?
well, I think you definitely uh, need to do your research, and you gotta make sure you're making the right decision. Like, real estate is something that you make your money when you buy the house, not when you sell it. And I think that's a very common misconception as far as what people actually think. Like, what that basically comes down to is that you got to buy right, and if you
Mm-hmm.
buy right, you're going to be okay. But if you overpay for that house, you're going to get yourself into some trouble. But
Right.
you need to take real estate is calculated risk, and you need to be able to uh, crunch your numbers and make sure that you feel confident in the numbers. And I would say, go to meetups, go to real estate events where you can talk to people doing it, get acquainted with people, get in Facebook groups, get educated. Don't just jump in, like, the worst thing you could do is go watch HGTV and say, that's what I'm going to do because they just flipped this house in a half an hour on this show and it looks amazing,
Right.
so like that.
That's not real life. Oh, that's really interesting. Um, I know it's a lot of hard work. Would you recommend somebody get a real estate license?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I and I say that because it's funny in the world of real estate and how agents are perceived, compared to how investors look at things, and it can be such a crazy difference in how agents look at real estate compared to how investors look at real estate. And I think that if you're going to be wholesaling, and this is already happening in several states across the nation, is that they're making wholesalers get licenses. So wholesaling is kind of the Wild West, and there are people that don't do it correctly. They take advantage of people. They do a lot of things that just isn't right. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, my coaches and mentors don't teach that, and
Yeah.
so it's people that are not, maybe their ethics and morals aren't in the right place, and they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, but that's what's going to cause wholesalers to end up getting their license. Now, I don't call myself a wholesaler. Wholesaler, that's just an exit strategy. Just
Okay.
like fixing and flipping is an exit strategy. Holding the property is an exit strategy. Airbnb, that's an exit strategy. So wholesaling is just an exit strategy. So, like I said, I've wholesaled one house, and then after that, I'm like, I'm never going to give up another house again. So
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. I think you're going to go far with this.
I
And I
appreciate it.
think you're going to have fun because I can feel the passion when we talk.
Yeah. I just, as far as, I talk to my kids a lot about generational wealth and passive income and assets over liabilities. What is an asset? What is a liability?
Uh-huh.
Now I don't want to say my mom didn't teach me these things, but it was kind of skimmed over, and
Yeah,
I really want to ingrain this into their heads that
that's
you know
wonderful.
if you want to you can be whatever you want to be, but put your money into real estate. That's what I would tell them.
That's great. Great advice. Well, Seth, thanks for talking to me today. Again, I'm Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni. If you like this interview today, make sure that you click the like button below, the thumbs up, and hope that you join me on the next podcast. And we'll be talking to another interesting job changer soon. All right. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Seth.
Thanks, Johnny.